All right, Art 1, here we are at 6-4, the illusion of depth. So we've got a foreground. This is the plane that appears closest to the viewer. The middle ground, this is between the foreground and the background. And then the background, the part that appears farther away. And so let's look at some art, see if we can figure out what's the middle ground, foreground, middle ground, and background. So let's look on page 37. Here's an example of a piece of artwork that shows a middle ground, foreground, and background. So you can see up front here, up front is the foreground. These are the people out here in front that are in line. And then we have a middle ground that's this structure here and the people inside here. And then we have a background that's way up here and maybe some of this back here. So that's foreground, middle ground, background. And a lot of times it looks like this where the foreground is lower and the middle ground is kind of in the middle and the background is in the upper area. It's not always that way, but it's fairly often that way. Because think about in nature, when you're looking at some landscape or some mountains or whatever, you have something that's in the foreground, the road or whatever you're walking on. And then you've got the middle ground, and that may be where you're going. And then the background is the mountains in the back. So you kind of start at the bottom and go up like that. So that's often the case. Here's another painting. This is on 130. And we have a foreground. That's these people in line. Oh, that's weird. People in line for food looks like. Just like there were people in line on that golden thing that we were just looking at on 37. The middle ground is like all this stuff going on in this tent. And then the background are these trees and the sky and stuff in the back. So again, we follow the foreground is in the bottom, then we've got the middle ground is in the middle, and the background is on up in the top. Again, not always the case, but very often that is the case. Here is another one. One more here. This is on page 135, where we can see foreground and middle ground and background. Foreground is of these people kneeling down, praying, doing what they're doing here. The middle ground here is, let's see, this is the adoration of the Magi. So this is a story from the Bible where the Magi come and worship and give gifts to Jesus, a baby Jesus. So here's baby Jesus and Mary here in the middle ground. Here's the Magi and probably some shepherds and stuff, although I don't see any sheep, so maybe they aren't shepherds, but Magi. Here's Jesus and Mary in the middle ground, and then some other people here in the middle ground, and then we've got the background here in the distance, the mountains, the sky, the trees, and stuff like that. All right, so those are some good examples of foreground, middle ground, and background. Let's look at the tools now. So the tools, I'm going to help draw some of these here just to help with this. So the tools that we're going to use are perspective. So the perspective is a big deal for helping you see the illusion of depth. So this one again here on page 135, you can see perspective happening. You've got kind of the face of this building, and then you have these lines going back to a point back here, and also from down here and back. And so all of those lines, that is what an artist's tool for perspective. And so you can see a little bit perspective here. Let's draw this. So what I've done is I've drawn kind of a not quite a square or cube here. And then I've drawn the same kind of thing on the other side, like this. And these, if you were going to draw these lines back like that, they would go back to these points. This is 2-point perspective. And so you have this illusion of depth here. and we use perspective. And there are different ways to use perspective. This would be 2-point perspective. There's also 1-point perspective. Anyway, overlapping to show depth. So you see something in front of something else, then you think, oh, the thing that is on top or overlapping, that's in front, that's behind. So A is in front, B is behind. So that's overlapping. Size. When you look at this here, we have a big rectangle and we have a little square here. This big rectangle looks like it's in front of this one. And that might not always be the case, but generally if these are kind of the same thing, like you have a big a car or a spaceship, something like that, and then you have another car that's back here. This car looks like it's probably in front. Maybe you draw a road like this so that you got some kind of... But little car, big car, this one looks like it is closer to us, and this one looks farther away. So that is a tool using size to show the illusion of depth. Another one, placement. Sometimes, so just like we were talking about how the stuff in the bottom of a painting looks closer to us than the stuff that's on top of the painting. And so placement makes a difference. This A box here looks like it's a little bit closer to us than this B box back here, even though they're about the same size. Just having one a little bit lower makes it look closer to us than the one that's farther behind or the one that's higher. Detail. So the foreground is going to have more detail. You know this when you look out at a mountain and you don't see each blade of grass. But you could look down at your feet and you see each blade of grass. So therefore, the stuff in the foreground is going to have more detail than the stuff in the background. And the artists use this to help show the illusion of depth. And let's see, can I find a quick example here? So this is a piece of Christina's World. Hopefully you guys aren't too tired of seeing this. But you can see in the foreground all kinds of detail in this grass. In the background, you can't see one blade of grass. It's just there's texture here, but you don't see the grass, each blade here by itself, like you do here. More detail, less detail. Down below, up above, bigger, smaller. All of these work together to show the illusion of depth. And the last one, color. So color gets duller farther away. And you notice this, I'm talking about mountains a bunch, but when you see like a mountain range, or when you're driving south from, say, Atascadero, you're in Atascadero, you're going down to Slow or something like that, and you see the mountains in the distance, the mountains that are closer have a more rich color than the ones that are farther away. The ones that are farther away get grayer and duller. The ones that are closer have more color, have more vibrancy to their color. And those are the tools that we use as for the illusion of depth. And that is 6-4.